At this time, sergeants, can you please start the recordings?
PC recording is up.
Cloud is rolling. Good morning, and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing for the Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public Sightings, and Disposition. At this time, we ask that all council members and staff please turn on their video for verification purposes. To minimize disruptions, please place all cell phones and electronic devices to vibrate or silent. If you have testimony you wish to submit for the record, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. We thank you for your cooperation. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Farah Lewis, Chair of the Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public Sightings, and Dispositions. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Council Members Ung, Holden, and Marte. Due to a conflict with the scheduling of the mayor's briefing on the executive budget, we will only be hearing the Mount Nebo Mount Carmel Cemetery merger requests. All other items on today's agenda will be laid over until our next meeting. I now recognize the subcommittee council to review today's remote hearing procedures.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I am Jeffrey Campagna, counsel to this subcommittee. Members of the public who wish to testify were asked to register for today's hearing. If you registered to testify and are not yet signed in to Zoom, please sign in now and remain signed in until after you have finished. If you wish to testify and have not registered, please go to www.council.nyc.gov/landuse to sign up now. If you are not planning to testify on today's item, please watch the hearing on the New York City Council website. All people testifying before the subcommittee will be on mute until they are recognized to testify. Please confirm that your mic is unmuted before you begin speaking. Public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes per witness. If you have written testimony that you would like the subcommittee to consider in addition to or in lieu of appearing before the subcommittee, or if you require an accessible version of a presentation given at today's meeting, please email landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Please indicate the project name and the subject line of the email. During the hearing, council members who would like to ask questions should use the Zoom raise hand function. The raise hand button should appear at the bottom of the participant panel. I will announce council members who have questions in the order that they raise their hands. Witnesses are reminded to remain in the meeting until they're excused by the chair. Lastly, there may be extended pauses if we encounter technical problems. We ask that you please be patient as we work through these issues. Chair Lewis will now continue with today's agenda.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councilmember De La Rosa. I now open the public hearing on the pre-considered LU related to applications number G220013 CCQ, the Mount Nebo Mount Carmel Cemetery merger request submitted by Mount Carmel Cemetery pursuant to sections 1506C of the New York State Non-for-Profit Corporation Law. This application requests approval to merger the Mount Carmel Cemetery located at 83-55 Cypress Hill Street, block 3750, lot 655, with the Mount Nebo Cemetery located at 82-07 Cypress Hill Street, block 3750, lot 705. The cemeteries are located in the Queens Council District represented by Councilmember Holden. Councilmember Holden, would you like to make any remarks this morning?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I support the merger between Mount Carmel Cemetery and Mount Nebo Cemetery in Glendale, which I represent. Mount Carmel Cemetery has provided services to the Jewish community since 1906, and they're well positioned to take control over Mount Nebo and ensure the cemetery is well maintained. If it was not for this merger, Mount Nebo would fall into disrepair. So it's a good merger. I applaud Mark Stempa and the rest of Mount Carmel's leadership for leading this effort and ensuring the interments at Mount Nebo are cared for. His team worked hard to move this process along as quickly as possible, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Minority Whip Vernikoff. We are joined today by Mark Stempa and Richard Bethiel, who will be presenting on behalf of the Mount Carmel Cemetery. Council, please administer the affirmation.
Please raise your right hands and state your names.
Richard Bethel.
Please unmute yourself, both of you, and stay unmuted during your testimony. Mr. Stempa, could you please raise your right hand and state your name?
Mark Stempa.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in response to all council member questions?
Yes.
Mr. Bido?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Chair, you may continue with today's agenda.
Thank you for joining us this morning. You may all begin.
I would be the first speaker for Mount Carmel if that's appropriate at this time. Thank you. First, good morning, and thank you for hearing this application today. We very much appreciate it. My name is Richard Bethel. I'm counsel to this cemetery, and I am a partner in the Pryor Cashman Law Firm. The particulars of this transaction are set out in some detail in the February 7th, 2022 letter I submitted to the speaker, which constitute the application. As you correctly stated, this is an application to merge two cemeteries where a public hearing and council approval are required pursuant to not-for-profit corporation law section 1506C. As Councilman Holden stated, and we appreciate his support here as well, Mount Carmel has been in operation for more than 100 years. Mount Nebo for longer than that. Mount Nebo, unfortunately, has fallen into disrepair. It is a corporation that is not meeting statutory requirements in certain respects, and which, unfortunately, we've experienced substantial issues, including from time to time, confusion as to burial records and even lots that have been sold more than once. Mr. Stempa has been working through these over the last 6 or 7 years. And in fact, the reason why we've been talking about this since 2015, but only getting to this point today, is we've been trying to work out as many of those issues prior to merger as possible. We think the merger is in the best interest of both cemeteries and the Jewish community. We also think that it avoids the city and the state becoming responsible for a cemetery that otherwise would be abandoned. And finally, as I'm sure council members all know, cemeteries in the state are subject to close state regulation. Before we came to this point of seeking the council's approval, we first needed the approval from the New York State Cemetery Board, which has statutory authority for regulating the operations of all not-for-profit cemeteries. I have attached to that February 7th letter to the speaker the letter from the Cemetery Board approving the merger and recommending approval by the other stakeholders like the council that are necessary, as well as the court or the Attorney General's office. And so we see no reason why any party would want to oppose this, and we would urge that the subcommittee approve it, that the full committee approve, and finally that the council approve it. If there are questions, I would be glad to answer them. And as you know, Mr. Stempa, the president of Mount Carmel, is also present here to answer questions as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask any council members if they have any questions.
I see no council members with questions on this item.
Are there any members of the public that would like to provide testimony?
The committee should stand at ease while we confirm this.
Okay.
Please. There are no members of the public signed up to testify on this item.
Thank you. That concludes today's business. I remind you that if you have written testimony on today's items, you may submit it to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Please indicate the project name in the subject heading. I would like to thank our applicants, members of the public who are here, and my colleagues, subcommittee council, land use staff, and the Sergeant at Arms for participating in today's hearing. This meeting is now adjourned.